The late 1960s were a wild time. America was buzzing. You had kids protesting, music was changing, and everything felt electric. Down in Detroit, a different kind of war was being fought. It wasn't on the 6 o'clock news, but it was just as intense. This was the muscle car war. Ford, Chrysler and General Motors were locked in a bare-knuckle brawl for street supremacy. Every week, it seemed like a new, more powerful engine was hitting the showrooms. It was a fantastic time to be a car guy. The air was thick with the smell of high-octane fuel and burning rubber, and the soundtrack was the roar of a big block V8. It was pure, unapologetic American horsepower. Now, over at General Motors, the corporate bigwigs had some rules. They were a bit, let's say, conservative. They had this internal ban on putting engines bigger than 400 cubic inches in their midsize cars, and they had officially pulled out of racing. Can you believe it? No official racing. It was like telling a lion not to hunt. But here's the thing about car guys, especially the engineers at Chevrolet. They don't like being told what to do. They live and breathe performance. So while the suits in the boardroom were busy with spreadsheets, a small secret group of gearheads was cooking up something special. They were working in the shadows, building an engine that would break all the rules. This secret group was what you'd call a skunk works operation. It was led by a brilliant guy named Vince Piggins. He was a performance guru. He knew that winning on Sunday meant selling on Monday. He gathered a team of like-minded rebels, engineers like Dick Keenath and the legendary Zora Arkus Duntov, the father of the Corvette. These guys were mavericks. They operated outside the official channels, bending rules and borrowing parts. Their mission was build a world-beating race engine for a series they weren't even supposed to be in. They were true outlaws, working after hours, fueled by coffee and a burning desire to win. Their project was a direct shot at the establishment. They knew that to compete with Ford's Mustang and its boss engine, they needed something extraordinary. It had to be light, powerful, and able to scream at high RPMs all day long. This wasn't about building a comfortable cruiser for a Sunday drive. This was about raw, untamed power. It was about creating a weapon for the racetrack that could. They were building an engine that would become a legend, just barely be considered street legal, a testament to what happens when you let passionate engineers off the leash. This secret project would give birth to the iconic Chevy 302 small block. So why the fuss over this specific engine? It all came down to a racing series called the Trans-American Sedan Championship, or Trans-Am for short. This was the place to be in the late 60s. It was where pony cars battled it out on road courses across the country. Think of it as the ultimate playground for the Ford Mustang, Mercury Cougar, and Dodge Challenger. But there was a catch. The rules were very strict about engine size. To compete in the main class, your engine had to be no larger than 305 cubic inches. Chevrolet had a problem. They had the fantastic 283 small block and the powerful 327, but neither fit the bill. They needed something right in that sweet spot. Vince Piggins and his team saw an opportunity. If they could build a 302 cubic inch engine and drop it into their new Camaro, they could take the fight directly to Ford. This wasn't just about winning a few trophies. It was about pride. It was about proving that Chevrolet engineering was the best in the world. The plan was audacious. They would create this engine under the guise of a special performance package for the Camaro, codenamed Z28. It was a clever way to get around the corporate racing ban by making it a production option. They could sell enough cars to make it legal for the track. It was a brilliant piece of corporate jiu-jitsu. The engineering behind the 302 was pure genius. It was what we call a parts bin special, but in the best way possible. The engineers took the best of what they already had and mashed it together to create something entirely new and incredible. They started with the engine block from the 327 V8, which had a big 4-inch bore. A bigger bore means bigger valves, which means more air and fuel can get into the cylinder. More air and fuel equals more power. It's a simple, beautiful formula. They were essentially giving the engine a massive set of lungs to breathe with, setting the stage for its high revving nature. To get the displacement down to the magic 302 number, they needed a shorter stroke, so they looked back to another Chevy legend, the 283 V8. They took its short 3-inch stroke crankshaft and fitted it into the 327 block. It was like a mad science experiment, but it worked perfectly. The combination of a large bore and a short stroke is the secret recipe for an engine that loves to reverend, it means the pistons don't have to travel as far up and down so the engine can spin faster. Without flying apart, this Frankenstein-like creation was the heart of the Z28, an engine born from clever thinking and a healthy dose of rebellion. This new engine was so much more than just a clever combination of parts. Piggins and his team knew it had to withstand the brutal punishment of endurance racing, so they built it tough, really tough. The 302 was packed with heavy-duty high-performance components. Right from the factory, it had a forged steel crankshaft and forged steel connecting rods. This wasn't the kind of stuff you found in your dad's station wagon. This was race-grade hardware, designed to handle extreme stress and high RPMs. It also featured a high-performance solid lifter camshaft, which allowed the engine to rev higher and make more power than a typical hydraulic car. On top of that, they gave it high-compression pistons squeezing the air-fuel mixture to an 11-to-1 ratio. This high compression is what gives an engine its explosive power, that instant throttle response that pushes you back in your seat to feed this hungry beast. Top of a special aluminum intake manifold, this whole setup was designed for one thing. They bolted a massive 780 CFM Holley 4-barrel carburetor on. Officially, Chevrolet rated the 302 at just 290 horsepower, but let me tell you, that was the biggest lie in Detroit. Maximum airflow at high engine speeds, it was a number they cooked up to keep the insurance companies and the GM executives happy. Everybody knew it was a joke. A stock 302 would easily push out close to 400 horsepower. It was a monster hiding in plain sight. In reality, on a dynamometer, some guys called it the Deucey, a simple nod to its 302, like a Jekyll displacement. And Hyde. This is why transformation, the engine would come alive. Mouse was the slang for a Chevy. Pitched scream, small block pulling and ferociously was what this the way to its 7,000 but the RPM, more fitting name even was the development process. The screaming mouse had a bit. It didn't have the low end treadline. The story goes that the block-down low engineers were so a little lazy on, but once the tachometer technology beating swept past that they actually got their hands on some of the studied the cylinder heads from the Ford Windsor engine-owned double hump heads, and used some of those ideas to improve the airflow on there. It was a classic case of if you can't beat M. This engine wasn't just built. It was crafted, learned from M, and then beat him. It was a carefully engineered package of power, durability and pure, unadulterated attitude designed to dominate the Trans-Am series and win the hearts of gearheads everywhere, putting the 302 into the Camaro Z28. Well, that created a legend on the street. It was honestly a pretty demanding car to drive. It just wasn't happy in stop and go traffic. The lumpy camshaft made it idle rough. That 4-speed manual gearbox to keep it in its power band, and the lack of low-end torque meant you really had to work. It was a race car, plain and simple, barely disguised for public roads. Drivers who owned one, they knew they had something special. They often talked about the car's dual personality. It could be a bit grumpy around town, but you know, when you found an open stretch of road and let it breathe, it was just pure magic. It was a car that demanded respect and skill from its driver on the racetrack. The Z28 was honestly a whole different story. This is where it truly belonged, in the hands of legendary drivers like Mark Donohue. The Z28 Camaro became a dominant force in Trans-Am. They figured out the secret to making it fast, keep the engine screaming. Drivers had to be aggressive, keeping the revs high through the corners to make sure they had power on exit. Mechanics would tune the engines to run right at the edge, pushing them to their absolute limit for hours on end. The sound of a pack of Z28s screaming down the main straight at Sebring or Daytona was unforgettable. A high RPM symphony of mechanical fury. The stories from that era, honestly, their fantastic mechanics would talk about how robust the 302 was. You could run it at 7,000 RPM, lap after lap, and it would just ask for more. They were relatively easy to work on and responded incredibly well to tuning. A few tweaks to the carburetor jets, a little adjustment to the ignition timing, and you could unlock even more power. Drivers loved its explosive top-end rush coming out of a slow corner. You'd have to be patient, but as the revs built, the car would just surge forward with an intensity that other cars just couldn't match. It was a thrilling, if sometimes terrifying, experience. The Z28's success was immediate. With the 302 under the hood, the Camaro won the Trans-Am Championship for Chevrolet in both 1968 and 1969. This little engine, it was a stunning victory, a real David and Goliath story, born in secret and built against corporate orders, beaten them at their own game, had gone up against the best from Ford and Chrysler, and it cemented the Z28's place in muscle car history. And honestly, all passion and engineering will always win out over. Proved what Vince Piggins and his renegade team knew: corporate bureaucracy. All good things must come to an end. The 302 wasn't just an engine, it was a statement. And well, the reign of the mighty 302 was sadly very short. By 1970, the automotive landscape was changing again. It was only produced for 3 years. From 1967 to 1969, the Trans-Am rules were relaxed, allowing for slightly larger engines. Chevrolet responded by creating a new Z28 package, this time featuring a high-performance version of the 350 small block called the LT1. The new engine had more torque and was more civilized on the street, making it a better all-around package for the everyday driver. And just like that, the wild high-revving 302 was gone from the production line. The end of the 302 was also hastened by the end of the muscle car golden age itself. By the early 1970s, new government regulations on emissions and safety were coming into effect. Insurance companies were charging astronomical rates for high-performance cars, and the oil crisis was just around the corner, making thirsty high compression V8s seem, well, irresponsible. The party was over. Detroit shifted its focus from horsepower to fuel economy, and radical race-bred engines like the 302 became relics of a bygone era. It was a sad time for car enthusiasts, as the fire-breathing monsters of the 60s were tamed and put out to pasture. But the legend of the 302 never faded. It had made its mark, the outlaw that beat the system. It was the little engine that could its short production run only added to its mystique. 302 engine today is like finding a rare treasure, finding a genuine numbers matching Z28 with its original. These cars are highly sought after by collectors and automotive history enthusiasts who appreciate their unique place in the engine. Represents a time when a small group of truly special, passionate engineers could defy the odds and build something that was all about pure, uncompromised performance. Histories. The Chevy 302 remains one of Detroit's greatest. What if it was a purpose-built weapon? It proved that sometimes the best ideas come from breaking a screaming mouse that roared like a lion on the racetrack. The rule-powered, its legacy isn't just in the trophies it won or the cars. Its true legacy is in the spirit of innovation and rebellion it represents. And horsepower was king. The 302 may have had a short life, but its incredible story and screaming exhaust note will echo in the halls of performance history forever.